The very first Mr. Olympia winner stepped on stage in 1965 looking like something carved out of mid-century Americana. Larry Scott had clean-cut movie star looks, arms that looked inflated beyond belief, and the kind of polished posing that made him an instant poster boy for the sport. But Scott didn't win just because he was pretty. He had the best biceps in the world at the time. His signature preacher curls on the bench named after him created a peak that fans called cartoonish. At 5'7" and about 205 pounds, his proportions were tight, balanced, and ahead of the era. Back then, Mr. Olympia didn't come with cash, endorsements, or global fame. It was just the title and the respect that came with it. Scott was already a two-time Mr. Universe, but Olympia gave him his crown. He won the first 2 years, then retired undefeated. Many say he walked away at the perfect time, before the size race changed the game forever. They called him the Myth, and the moment Sergio Oliva walked on stage, the nickname made sense. Born in Cuba, trained in weightlifting before defecting to the US, Sergio brought a level of size and shape the world had never seen. His waist was absurdly small, his limbs looked impossibly long and full, and his V-taper became the gold standard in bodybuilding. At his peak, Sergio carried mass with grace. His arms stretched tape at 22 inches. His thighs pushed over 29, and all of that sat under a tiny 27-inch waist. On stage, he barely needed to pose. He'd just raise his arms in a front double biceps, and it was over. Oliva won 3 consecutive Olympias, dominating a still young field. But in 1969, someone new stepped on stage. Someone with ambition, symmetry, and Hollywood already in his eyes. He challenged Sergio that year and lost. That rivalry would define bodybuilding's first real dynasty, and in just 1 year, everything would flip. When Arnold stepped back on stage in 1970, he wasn't there to chase the crown, he came to take it. At just 23 years old, Arnold Schwarzenegger dethroned Sergio Oliva and began a 6-year reign that would make him the most famous bodybuilder of all time. He wasn't the biggest, he wasn't the most shredded, but he understood something others didn't. Presentation wins titles. Arnold knew how to work a crowd, how to control the pace of a pose-off, and how to hit his strengths while hiding his weak points. His chest was massive, his arms legendary, and his charisma unmatched. At 6'2" and over 230 pounds, he dominated not just with muscle but with presence. The sport grew with him. Crowds got bigger. Coverage expanded. By 1975, his final win came during the filming of Pumping Iron, which turned bodybuilding into cinema and Arnold into a global icon. After that, he stepped away from the stage. He had nothing left to prove, and Hollywood was already calling. But the vacuum he left behind created chaos and opened the door to one of the most unexpected champions in Olympia history. With Arnold gone, the Olympia stage entered a new phase, and in 1976, Arnold's close friend and training partner, Franco Columbu, took the title. At 5'5", Franco didn't tower over his competition, but his density was shocking. A former powerlifter and boxer, he packed under 200 pounds of raw muscle onto a compact frame. His back and chest were thick, his strength unmatched. He once blew up a hot water bottle with his lungs. Franco's win marked the last of the mass before lines era, because what followed next couldn't have looked more different. Frank Zane, crowned in 1977, 1978, and 1979, brought something else entirely: aesthetic perfection. Zane didn't chase size. He chased symmetry, proportion, and razor-sharp conditioning. Weighing around 185 pounds, he beat much larger men by presenting a look closer to a Greek statue than a comic book character. His reign proved that detail, balance, and posing mastery could defeat pure mass, at least for a few years. But the size game would return, and when it did, it came with attitude. In 1980, after 5 years away from competition, Arnold Schwarzenegger returned without warning. He walked onto the stage in Sydney, leaner than before, less massive than in his prime, and surrounded by competitors who had been preparing for months. Many thought he was just there to watch, but when he took off his tracksuit, it was clear he was there to win. And he did. The decision shocked fans, judges, and fellow athletes. Arnold's physique, while still impressive, didn't match the size or conditioning of rising stars like Mike Mentzer or Chris Dickerson. Many called it a political win, charisma over muscle. Others argued that his posing, stage control, and legacy gave him the edge. The controversy deepened in 1981 when Franco Columbu returned, 2 years after a devastating leg injury. Once again, competitors grumbled. Franco had size and experience, but his symmetry had suffered. Still, the judges gave him the title. 2 years, 2 comebacks, 2 champions surrounded by controversy. And then, in 1982, a quieter champion rose, one whose style was nothing like Arnold or Franco. When Lee Haney stepped onto the Olympia stage in 1984, the entire sport changed direction. He was bigger than Zane, more refined than Sergio, and more composed than anyone before. before him. Standing at 5 feet 11 inches and weighing over 240 pounds, Haney combined sheer size with symmetry, something many thought couldn't coexist. From 1984 to 1991, Haney won 8 consecutive Olympia titles, setting a record that stood untouched for over a decade. And he wasn't just massive, he brought balance. Wide shoulders, a narrow waist, deep muscle separation, and posing that felt almost effortless. More importantly, Haney approached the sport strategically. He trained smart, he avoided the injuries that derailed other greats, and his calm, focused demeanor gave him an edge on stage where confidence could sway judges as much as condition. During his reign, competitors tried everything to beat him, from bulking up beyond reason to refining their aesthetics, but no one could match his completeness. By 1991, Haney stepped away undefeated as champion, tied to the number 8, a record many believed would never fall. When Dorian Yates took the Olympia stage in 1992, he didn't smile. He didn't need to. His presence said everything. Nicknamed the Shadow, Yates brought something entirely different, a look that felt less like bodybuilding and more like biological warfare. His physique was dense, grainy, brutally conditioned. His back was the thickest anyone had ever seen, and his training style, heavy, focused, brutally intense, became legend. At 5'10" and around 260 pounds on stage, Yates ushered in the mass monster era, a turning point where size and conditioning mattered more than classical lines or stage charisma. He won 6 straight Olympias, often arriving bigger and harder than the year before. His dominance was so complete that even injuries couldn't keep him from winning. Critics claimed his shape lacked the aesthetics of Haney or Arnold. Fans argued he raised the bar for conditioning forever. Either way, no one could ignore what Yates represented: brutality, discipline, and evolution. His reign ended in 1997, not from defeat, but from damage. The torch was passed, and what came next would make history. When Ronnie won his first title in 1998, most of the world was stunned. He wasn't a favorite. He wasn't even expected to place in the top 3. But that night, Ronnie stepped on stage with a physique that looked unreal, massive, shredded, and shockingly symmetrical. That combination hadn't been seen before at such a level. At his peak, Ronnie stood 5'11" and competed at over 295 pounds, with striated glutes, veins running across his lats, and arms that looked engineered in a lab. His strength was as legendary as his size. This was the man lifting 800-pound squats and deadlifts for reps, while maintaining pro-level conditioning. From 1998 to 2005, Ronnie won 8 straight titles, tying Lee Haney's record, but in the eyes of many, pushing the physical limits of human potential even further. Despite the accolades, Ronnie remained grounded. His high-pitched laugh, iconic "yeah buddy," and humble work ethic made him a fan favorite. He was a cop from Texas who morphed into arguably the greatest bodybuilder of all time. But dominance always invites challengers, and in 2006, one would finally rise. For years, Jay Cutler had been chasing a giant. He placed second to Ronnie Coleman multiple times, always close, never quite there. But in 2006, after years of refining his shape, dialing in his conditioning, and learning from every loss, Jay finally did it. He toppled the king. At 5'9" and over 270 pounds, Jay Cutler wasn't the most aesthetic on stage, but his size, wide frame, and sharp detailing gave him the edge. In 2006, he stepped on stage with a package so complete, from quads that looked like armor plating to a waist that had tightened over the years, judges couldn't deny him. He won again in 2007, defending his title and silencing critics who thought his first win was a fluke. But Jay's reign would hit turbulence. In 2008, a new threat emerged. Younger, hungrier, and sharper in every pose, this next champion would do something never done before, and then trigger the greatest comeback in Olympia history. Dexter Jackson, known as the Blade for his razor-sharp conditioning, pulled off one of the biggest upsets in Olympia history. While others chased mass, Dexter perfected balance, tight waist, flawless symmetry, and striations carved like sculpture. At 5'6" and about 235 pounds, he wasn't the biggest, but he was undeniably the most polished that night, and it earned him the Sando. But Dexter's time at the top was brief. In 2009, Jay Cutler returned to make history. He came back leaner, fuller, and more confident, becoming the first man to ever lose the Olympia title and then win it back. It was the ultimate comeback, cementing Jay's legacy as more than a one-time winner. He defended again in 2010, but the crowd could already feel it. Someone younger was climbing fast. In 2011, Phil Heath finally surpassed Jay Cutler and took home his first Mr. Olympia title. At 5'9" and around 245 pounds, Phil brought an unbeatable blend of round muscle bellies, razor-sharp conditioning, and near-flawless symmetry. His shoulders looked inflated, his arms were like sculpted boulders, and his waist stayed tight, giving him that perfect X-frame judges crave. From 2011 to 2017, Phil won 7 straight Olympias. Each year, the pressure mounted. Challengers like Kai Green, Sean Roden, and Big Ramy pushed him harder and harder. But Phil adapted. His posing improved, his detail got tighter, and his mindset became laser-focused. What made Phil's reign unique wasn't just the wins, it was the expectation. Fans didn't wonder if he would win, they wondered how close anyone else could get. But all streaks bend eventually. In 2018, something unexpected happened. A challenger brought something Phil hadn't, hunger mixed with flawless execution. And for the first time in years, the gift was unwrapped. Sean Roden, known for his classic shape and flowing lines, brought a look that combined old-school aesthetics with modern size. While Phil still had mass and detail, his midsection had started to fade in control, and Sean capitalized on it. The result? A narrow victory, but a historic one. Sean became the oldest first-time Mr. Olympia winner at 43 years old. Fans and critics alike celebrated it as a return to form, symmetry over size. But Roden's reign was cut short. Legal issues prevented him from defending his title in 2019, throwing the Olympia stage into uncertainty. And out of that void emerged a new titan, Big Ramy. At over 290 pounds on stage, Mamdou Big Ramy Elsbier became the embodiment of mass with class. In 2020, he stunned the world with a physique that finally matched his hype. Conditioning had always held him back, until it didn't. He outshined veterans and newcomers alike, claiming the Sandow with sheer dominance. Ramy's win was a global moment. He was the first Egyptian and one of the few non-American champions in Olympia history. But this new era wouldn't last long. By 2021, Big Ramy was still on top, defending his crown with overwhelming size and a commanding presence. But the competition had caught up. The conditioning gap that once held him back now separated him from the next rising stars. Enter Hadi Choopan, the Persian Wolf. Hadi had long been a fan favorite, known for his insane density, granite-hard muscle, and warrior-like intensity. In 2022, he brought it all together. Shredded to the bone, perfectly proportioned, and full of fire, Hadi became Iran's first Mr. Olympia, a massive win for international bodybuilding. But his time at the top was brief. In 2023, Derek Lunsford, a former 212 champion, made the full transition to open class. At 5 feet 6 inches and nearly 250 pounds, Derek combined mass, flow, and next-level posing. His back double biceps was arguably the best in the lineup, and his overall look was so refined, even Hadi couldn't keep pace. That year, Derek Lunsford became the first man in history to win both the 212 and Open Olympia titles. But his reign was short, because just 1 year later, he would be dethroned by a new kind of champion with an entirely different presence. After years of close calls and steady improvements, Samson Dauda arrived in Las Vegas with a package that silenced every doubt. Towering at over 5 feet 11 inches and weighing in at nearly 300 pounds, he brought a combination of mass, aesthetics, and charisma that the judges couldn't ignore. What made Samson's victory so powerful wasn't just his size, it was his presentation. Every pose hit with grace, every muscle flowed into the next. He looked like a modern-day Greek statue come to life. The 2024 Olympia was stacked. Derek Lunsford was coming off his historic 2023 win. Hadi Choopan was still in the mix. Nick Walker had returned. And yet, Samson stood tallest. With this win, Samson Dauda became the first Nigerian-born Mr. Olympia, adding his name to a growing list of global champions and showing once again that bodybuilding is now truly international. His rise has inspired a new generation of African athletes and reshaped the conversation about symmetry, structure, and what a champion should look like.